When I first seen the poster for this movie, I wasn't sold because it looks very kind of Hallmark. I am bloody glad I took a chance on this one. Just shows you can't judge a movie by its poster. A Little White Lie, or Shriver. I've seen it being called both online, so just keeping you right. Now, this movie is a very simple tale being told. Now, it sets itself up as a comedy, which I think just works well within what the movie's trying to tell you. In a nutshell, we've got Kate Hudson here as Simone, and the university she's working at, they're putting on a literary festival. It's kind of been dwindling over the years, so they are reaching out for a huge boost to try and get traffic coming back to these festivals. And this is where Michael Shannon comes into the movie as Shriver. So bear with me a moment, I will explain. So Shriver was an author who wrote this like kick-ass amazing book and then just fell off into the abyss about 20 years ago. No one's ever heard from him, seen him since, they don't know where the fuck Shriver is. And for this we see that Simone is sending out shit ton of letters to people of the name Shriver. Well, the full name, not just Shriver, because that would be far too fucking many. Michael Shannon's character here, he has the same name. He responds to the letter and says that he'll go along. He's not a writer, but he's not quite sure why he's been invited at this point.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
So Michael Shannon Shriver. We see that Michael Shannon's Shriver is like a handyman. He doesn't excel too much in life. You know, his best mate's just chilling with him at the bar. He keeps a very low-key lifestyle, but he's not striving for excellence. However, once this letter turns up, he's not sure whether to respond to it or not, and him and his friend chat it out. His friend is very aware of the old Shriver and tells him to take a chance on it. Because at like worst case scenario, he gets like a nice hotel and lovely treatment for a long weekend. Reluctant as he may be, Shriver responds and says he'll go. Well, his friend writes the letter, but he says he's going to go nonetheless. And once he arrives, this is where the movie just kicks into comedy. It's a very situational, witty comedy more than anything else. You know, it's not too much slapstick or anything ridiculously over the top. Because what we see is that Shriver is just getting walked around, introduced to all of these people who want to meet him. You know, he struggles to read and write as it is, so he's not got that much belief in himself, so he needs to try and sell the fact that he is Shriver. And given that Shriver's been missing for 20 years, there's not a lot to go on to work out who he was to then pretend to be him. It's a very tough line he's walking. Whereas Simone is just so overwhelmed that Shriver's arrived, she isn't paying two thoughts to whether this is or isn't the real guy. He's been off the radar. She doesn't know what he's like in his personal life. No one really does. And so it's kind of believable that this would be him. Given that he wrote one book and then disappeared, he's not going to come to this festival and be the life of the party. So he's getting kind of walked through and introduced to everyone. It turns out the book that Shriver wrote was a little bit misogynistic, a little bit sexist. So when he is meeting all the other professors at the university, some people already dislike him. Some people love him. And he has to navigate these relationships immediately, because he can't understand the resentment. I mean, he knows that it's Shriver based on his book, but he doesn't know the specifics of it to like challenge it.
Never mind, I'm sure you're right.
But whilst he just has to sit back and accept the resentment, he does do his best to try and just mellow it out. You know, it's not him, so he does his best to try and make sure that at least the conversations and the dinners, they go as well as they can.
You don't talk to me like that.
Shut up!
You don't talk to me like that.
Believe.
You know, these professors are also creatives, so they've got their own writings. And what ends up happening is they're showing their writing to Shriver because they want acceptance from him. Michael Shannon doesn't have a fucking clue what he's reading or if it's like good or not. So he's just very humble, very nice. Again, enough to just skim through the conversation without putting his foot in anything. And that is where the situational comedy comes in most. It's mainly down to the other people's expectations of him rather than anything that he's really doing. There are some wacky characters at this uni that we come to find. You know, one guy just cuts about on a horse because he never learned to drive.
Well, how are we going to get to the university?
Yeah, it's a little daft at times, but for the most part you're just watching a man navigate this life. As the movie's progressing, somebody does end up going missing, and based on Shriver's book and what we kind of don't know about him and his alibi doesn't quite line up, he is the main suspect. So we've kind of got the crime side of it getting fed in slowly, whereas everyone is so in love with the idea of Shriver that it couldn't possibly be him. So a lot of people are quick to defend him, quick to accuse him, and again Michael Shannon is left in the middle with nowhere to turn.
Never mind, I'm sure you're right.
You know, there's a lot of moments where he's talking to his own conscience that keeps popping up, and what I do enjoy is this movie very subtly, but just throughout the entire runtime, is playing with the idea of imposter syndrome. You couldn't possibly believe it's him, or when you get to a position, you don't feel good enough to be there, and that's what this movie's here to tell. Michael Shannon playing a gruff, ex-writer that kind of fell off the radar 20 years ago and is back. Well, that's the character he's meant to be. It works really well because in his life as a handyman and just a very minimalist guy, like he's leaking roof, like he's very minimal. It's believable that he's also this character. But Michael Shannon just plays it fantastically well. The guy's funny. The guy has really good timing and great reactions throughout the movie. You know, whether they're more grounded or they're ridiculous, there's a lot of people around him in his orbit that are just bringing the best out of Shriver here. Kate Hudson as Simone is fantastic. She is just so full of optimism and so happy that Shriver's here that you feel bad whenever that kind of falters for her. Whether someone is saying something shitty about Shriver or she's starting to maybe have her doubts herself. Those two bounce off each other very well, and they are the main crux of the story, is those two kind of getting on, creating a relationship. He never outright lies. Like, he said he was Shriver and accepted to go, but he never feeds too much into it where he fully pretends to be him. He's kind of just thrust into situations where he has to be him, if that makes sense. So with all that being said, where would I be putting A Little White Lie and or Shriver? If you enjoy these kind of situational, witty comedies, little bits of it may be ridiculous, but it's got this undertone message through it, in this case, imposter syndrome. Make time for this movie. It is beautifully written as well. The pacing is fantastic. All the characters are introduced very naturally, and you can understand Shriver's hesitation at leaning too far into this persona, but also he's trying to find himself throughout this entire movie. You know, everyone's coming to him for his opinion, and he's still trying to formulate his own. It is a very clever movie. Once you look past some of the ridiculousness, I'll grant you, the movie does hit on a few different levels that I didn't expect it to. So look, have you seen A Little White Lie? What did you think of it? Let me know if we agree or disagree. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. You're just going to make my day. But with all that now said, as always, thank you so much for watching.